Today is December the 3rd. Was Jesus' resurrection prophesied? Let's find out together as we study Psalm 16. So in Psalm 16, we continue to look at the Psalms, which are a source of many of the prophecies about Jesus. It's very interesting. The prophecies about Jesus are as abundant in the book of Psalms as they are in the books of the prophets. One of the reasons for this, I believe, is because David, as king of Israel, writes many of the Psalms, and as he does that, he draws a connection between himself as God's anointed king over Israel, and frequently mentions a coming king, one who will also be anointed, who will also be Messiah. The word Messiah means the anointed one, but who will reign in a very different way from David himself. Psalm 16 is one of those psalms. In Psalm 16, the first several verses, David is clearly talking about himself. But listen to what happens when it comes to verse 7. I'll bless the Lord who guides me. Even at night, my heart instructs me. I know the Lord is always with me. I will not be shaken, for he's right beside me. No wonder my heart is glad and I rejoice. My body rests in safety, for you will not leave my soul among the dead, or allow your Holy One to rot in the grave. You'll show me the way of life, granting me the joy of your presence and the pleasures of living with you forever. Did David truly expect that he would be resurrected? You know, possibly. That is certainly one way to understand this psalm. But the New Testament authors chose to understand this psalm in a slightly different way. David is talking about the anointed one, the Messiah. And as he talks about him, he says, your anointed one will not lie in the grave. Just the very way he refers to it seems to say to me that here it's one of those cases when David is looking beyond himself. He sees something different, something beyond himself. In the book of Acts, Acts chapter 2, the very first sermon that is preached in the New Testament, Peter, in speaking to the crowd, quotes this section. He does it in detail, and remember, Peter would not have had the advantage of having a little Bible in front of him. He's speaking from memory. Starting in verse 25, King David said this about him, and the him is the Jesus that they had betrayed, the Jesus that they had nailed to a cross, and the Jesus whom God raised back to life. King David said this about him. I see that the Lord is always with me. I'll not be shaken, for he's right beside me. No wonder my heart is glad. My tongue shouts his praises. My body rests in hope, for you will not leave my soul among the dead, or allow your Holy One to rot in the grave. You've shown me the way of life, and you'll fill me with the joy of your presence. Now listen to what Peter says. Dear brothers, think about this. You can be sure that the patriarch David wasn't referring to himself, for he died and he was buried, and his tomb is still here with us. but he was a prophet. He knew God had promised with an oath that one of David's own descendants would sit on his throne. David was looking into the future and speaking of the Messiah's resurrection. He was saying that God would not leave him among the dead or allow his body to rot in the grave. God raised Jesus from the dead. We're all witnesses of this. Does the Old Testament prophesy about Jesus' resurrection? Peter said it did. There are this and a few other passages in the Old Testament that seem to refer to the act of resurrection that takes place for all of us, but certainly for God's anointed. Like, follow, and subscribe to this podcast on whatever platform you used to listen to it. Email your questions to us at questions@becomehope.com. We'll see you in church on Sunday.